You are still watching the Wednesday edition of New Dawn, and this is our first interview segment today on the program. And there is no other topic that is more germane to Nigerians now as the economic situation in the country. We're having a lot of challenges. Fuel is out of range with Naira. It's so difficult to get, and you know, people are groaning, as it were. So we're having, it's fair to say that we're having some challenges, you know, and we're looking at the Nigerian economic situation, and then we want to look at the public-private partnership to the rescue. Is there anything that can be done within the process to make, you know, to give us a better space, a better life when it comes to the economic situation of our country, with the involvement of, you know, the public, the private, together in a synergy, public-private partnership. To discuss this morning, to help us look at this issue, two people. One is a Director General. When I see Directors General, that's a sound with power. It sounds like Major General, you know, the Director General PPP office in Ogun State. Barrister Dapo Duwele, we'd like to welcome you, sir, to New Dawn this morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on the program.
All right, and then to balance the equation, we are gender sensitive here on the station. We also have another barrister, a doctor, a human resource consultant, and she's also going to be helping us to look at this issue. Do we have any gains at all? Is there any synergy? Is there anything at all that the PPP can contribute to the economy to make sure that we have a respite? Dr. Risi Shanusi, we'd like to welcome you to New Dawn this morning.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here.
All right. Now let's begin with the DG. Now, public-private partnerships. Let's look at it. Is that synergy, does it seem feasible? Because you are looking at two ends of the divide. You know, people would always tell you that you know, government offices are not run, you know, professionally. You know, and they will also tell you that, okay, you know, a professional would not do well in government. You know, so can it really work? Public-private partnership. Has it ever worked, and will it ever work? Before we even come to economic, the Nigerian economic challenge.
Public-private partnership is actually a fantastic collaboration between the public sector, government, and the private sector, which encompasses anybody who's not in government. So people tend to misunderstand the synergy that works very well between the public sector and the private sector. We're talking about the economy here. We're talking about economic challenges. Yeah. So it takes all hands to come together on deck to fuse together and then fashion a good way forward. If you look at it, the private sector drives the economy. The private sector infuses investment into the economy. And therefore, we need that expertise. So if you look at it, public-private partnership really is a collaboration between the government, the public sector, so inviting government, public sector, inviting the private sector expertise, investment, money, project management, know-how to come and put money into the public realm. So if we look at it, we always need investment in our roads, our hospitals, our schools. We need power, we need energy, we need water, we need a whole host of things. And it's the combination between the public sector, running things, the private sector, bringing their investment in, and that usually you'll find out forms a very, very successful collaboration. And it's happened, if you look at the Ogun State example, we have an infrastructure deficit in this country. And Ogun State is no different, but since the beginning of this administration from May of 2019, the governor, His Excellency, President Abeokuta, has invited the private sector in partnership, and that is testament in the different projects we have all across the three senatorial districts in Ogun State. So, and there's more to come. So I'm sure in the program as we go on, I'll be able to tell you about the projects that have been going on, which is testament to the successful collaboration between the public sector and the private sector.
Okay, well, Barrister Shanusi, I know that there are enormous benefits, attached to PPP, and one of the success, stories would be the MMA2, the Murtala Mohammed Airport Terminal 2, operated by Courtney. But I mean, Nigerians would have expected more, after that came into front burner. So I would like to ask, as Nigeria fully embraced PPP, despite its enormous benefits?
I believe Nigerians in general, they have, because PPP, like the DG said, is a collaboration, and private sector coming in to collaborate with the public sector, being the government, is an effective partnership. The private sector, they're actually the end users. When you look at it, they are the end users, and because they're the end users, they've embraced it. It's just that there are some bottlenecks. This is the reason why we're here, in terms of the economic challenges, that is making it quite, difficult for people to appreciate, the benefits of PPP.
But DG, sir, some people feel that government has no business in business, and if that is true, how do you now eventually work out that partnership? We're still coming to what has been done in Ogun State, and then of course the challenges that we're facing, and then how actually, but then the question people have always said is, okay, government doesn't really have any business in business. So if government doesn't have any business in business, like people say, why is government handing over, why is the government holding on to business? Why do you still now need the public-private partnership? Why don't you just let the the private sector drive the economy? Why must government still hold on to business, even when people say government has no business in business?
That's interesting. You see, one of the hallmarks of public-private partnership is that the proper risks must be allocated to the partner best able to withstand those risks. So, for instance, what government does very well. What the private sector does, they do very well. So, government is skilled at delivering governance to the people, passing fiscal and business policy that would drive the private sector, that would enable and provide a favorable, sustainable environment for them to come in to do business. So, government owns a lot of these assets. The hospitals, the schools, the roads infrastructure belong to government. So government then invites the private sector, like I mentioned earlier, is a collaboration. So therefore we are looking at the best elements of the private sector to come into work with government. So if you look at business, you're right, government has no business running private business. Government business is delivering governance to the people, bringing the greatest amount of good to the widest number of the population in Ogun State. And that's what government of President Abeokuta does very, very well. So what I'm saying is that the private sector have been running businesses for many, many years. So they're well ingrained, they're well experienced. So we invite that experience, that business focus, that commercial news, which they have, to infuse it into building, into refurbishing, into establishing and making good public infrastructure. And that's the benefit and the beauty of the partnership between the public sector and the private sector. And the key thing we need to remember is that if done and done very well, like we have in the Ogun State example, then public-private partnership works, and it works very well.
Well, Barrister Oduwole, I know that there are many examples or types of PPP model. We have the design, build, finance, operate. That's the DBFO. The build, own, operate, the build, own, operate, transfer, buy, build, operate, and build, lease, operate, transfer, BLOT. So which of these are you exploring in Ogun State?
In Ogun State, the first thing we do is we look at the benefit. What do we want to achieve here? And why public-private partnership does not work for every single project. You start with a project. What do we want to do? What do we want to build? What do we want to refurbish? So that's the first thing you do. And then you engage with the private sector to look at the best model. So it could be, design, build, operate, and pass on. Don't forget that these assets belong to the government. And the beauty of it is that you would have an asset which would be run, managed, post-refurbishment or post-construction for a wide number of years. Usually, public-private partnership projects run for between 15 to 25 years, some 10 years. So they are long-term projects. So you need to build, you need to get the right partner to work with government. So on looking at the project, you then look at the best model that you're going to adopt. And that's the best way to go with a public-private partnership. So it's not written in stone, they vary. So Ogun State is not locked into one particular model of public-private partnership. We look at what we want to build, we look at the longer term and the best way to deliver the proceeds of the PPP to the people of Ogun State.
Now, Dr. Sanusi, when you look at all these arrangements, sometimes you find that counterpart funding becomes an issue. You've seen these synergies sometimes, and then there are some of these public-private partnerships that we have seen. I could give you one or two examples, I may not want to, but there was a particular one along the Lagos-Ibadan axis that didn't work, and then you are asking yourself, okay, what are the bottlenecks? What are the things within this arrangement that frustrates an effective partnership?
I think basically from the initial stage, every PPP project that government undertakes, they will have looked at how to manage, how to operate, and the expertise of the private sector that they will bring in. But the fact is that along the way, there will be bottlenecks. It's with, like in a home, in your home, along the way you have a storm, and you have to look back. I think maybe what we are lacking is the ability to review. For example, there are legal implications that are involved. And if things are not going well, we're meant to go back to the drawing table. As in project management, you do review, you do legal review of that contractual agreement to see where the bottleneck emanated from. The same thing, political stability affects PPP project. The same thing, like DG said, a project may be like 16 years. And the government, comes in for 2 terms. You're talking of 8 years. So when a new government comes in, it may not want to carry on with that project. And of course, it's the public sector, the end users, that will suffer for that. I mean, those are just, very visible examples of what's causing bottlenecking. It probably may not necessarily be the expertise of the public sector, but the ability of the team to come together, do a review, look back, what are we doing? It's like you send your child to school and the child is not doing well in the exam. You sit down, is it the lesson teacher that is not teaching my child well? Is it my child that is not concentrating well? Or in totality, is it that that child has no interest in that project anymore? So you look at all those possible practical options and you go back to the drawing board and then you move on. Even if you have to, you see, the fact is that the legal contract must make provisions for anything that could go wrong. Contingency plans. And sometimes maybe we didn't do that. They didn't do that when they embark on the project at the initial stage.
Well, Barrister, you did strike a chord there where you highlighted some of the problems, which is the propensity to jettison the agreement validly enter into by the government. Now let's talk about the legal framework. Can the legal framework be structured in such a way that it would prevent that from happening?
Obviously.
Even for incoming administration?
New administration that may want to review.
The thing is, government is meant to be accountable to the people. Who brought the government in? It's the people. And any new government if there is no continuity in government, the government should be able, there are some things the government should be able to go back and look at what the previous government had done. If it's part of their manifestos, they should be able to embark on that and proceed further, or even improve on that project. I don't think there is anything wrong. At least the little I know about this government as well, there are some of the projects of the past government that is the same government, but different governors, that Governor Abeokuta proceeded with doing. So it's not a case of, in totality, that a new government will say, we're not going to proceed with what we found on the ground. So long as it's going to benefit the populace, which is the reason why they're here. All these infrastructures are for the benefit of the populace, of the electorate. And I don't think any right-thinking government at any particular time will say, oh, we're not going to proceed because it wasn't our project.
Right. Can I just come in very quickly? If I can, thank you. If I can just give the Ogun State example, and agree with Dr. Shanusi here. One of the government is a continuum. Governor Abeokuta, MFR, has given a fantastic example of how government should continue. One of the first things this administration did was to continue the projects that had been commenced by the previous administration. The other thing I was going to talk about was continuity. One of the early things that this government did was to promulgate what's called the Public-Private Partnership Law of 2019 of Ogun State. Now that gives investors confidence that when you come and you bring your money into Ogun State to invest in any PPP project, there is confidence that your money is safe, your investments are safe. The PPP law tells you what to expect, how we go about this project, and that's very important. The second thing that we do with our PPP project is that we have a very good, what you call a cast iron contract, which is signed by both parties. And if you look at all the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory, I think Ogun State ranks third or so nationally, or fourth, in keeping to contractual obligations, and that gives investors confidence. So when they're bringing millions of dollars into Ogun State to come and invest in our public infrastructure, first of all, they want returns on the investment, which they will get in Ogun State, and then of course the money is safe. And then we also provide fiscal policies that allows them to repatriate their profits when they want to, which is part of the benefit of public-private partnership. So the private sector also wants returns on the investments, and that they do get in Ogun State.
Okay, and I want to say that what you have just talked about Ogun State is very rare, because what we've found is that government after government will dissociate itself from the previous project of the previous administration, and then you find that these things get moribund. So a lot of the times people are wary of, of doing business with government. Now let's move away from that, and then let's now look at the unbundling. Sometimes when you talk about this public-private partnership, we've had the unbundling of the NNPC, for example. And people are more confused. It's like the more you look, the less you see. So sometimes people are, a little cautious. They say, okay, do we really have a leeway when it comes to, can the PPP actually work? I don't know whether I'm making any sense here. Some people just look at the whole scenario and say, okay, is this thing really designed to work? Is this partnership really designed to work? Have you ever felt that way?
I have a very strong confidence in public-private partnership, not just because I'm the DG of PPP in Ogun State, but because I have a wide and a varied experience in public-private partnerships, both within and outside of Nigeria. PPP does work. I mentioned the PPP law, which we have in Ogun State, which is very, very important because it sets out the obligations of both parties, and you know what to expect. So even after a current administration, succeeding administrations need to abide by the law. It's the law of Ogun State. I also mentioned the contract. The other thing is that I mentioned earlier on, not all projects are suitable for public-private partnership. There are some, it just needs to be design and build. Some just needs to be contractor finance. And some are actually very good for public-private partnership. If we look at Ogun State, for instance, we are talking about our gateway International Cargo Airport, which is going to be commissioned by His Excellency the Governor very, very soon. Now, this is a fantastic example of a PPP project. There's something called concessioning, which is part of PPP. So with this one, the government, because of the key importance of this project, government spent its money to build the airport with the view that there are lots of private investors who want to come and invest in an airport. So therefore, they will come in and they'll be granted a concession to run the airport. The same thing, there's a 250-bed hospital, specialist hospital, which was commenced by the previous administration. Excuse me. And one thing, another example of this government continuing is that it's going to be a PPP project. We are speaking to potential investors at the moment, and they will come in and they will invest, complete the project, and run it for a number of years. And the beauty is that because the asset belongs to the government, after they run and maintain it successfully for a number of years, at the end of the term, it is returned to the government in good condition and well maintained. So PPP does what? It's just that it's important to get the right partner, the right private sector partner, with the relevant experience and background who can come in and run the project without any problem. The difficulty you have nationally and internationally is that sometimes conditions do change because it's a long-term project. A lot of economic policy can change over 20 years. And sometimes the reality, you have an economic crisis, you have a cash crunch, you have COVID, which is coming, so there's some things that are unforeseen. So therefore, sometimes you have to revisit the contract, you have to renegotiate in the economic reality of the day. And sometimes, if it is well understood, it will still run very smoothly. And that's the benefit of a public-private partnership arrangement.
All right. Now let me take on, Madam, because you might not, I might not want to take on the DG for that. And that's when you're looking at now the specific areas when it comes to partnership. You want to see results. For example, now the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway was concessioned some time ago. I'm not sure we saw any result. You know, we've had some of those things like that, and then you are asking yourself, okay, are we really sure these things are coming? You know, because the question is the PPP to the rescue. Can PPP actually rescue the economy of the nation? And in what perspective, in what areas do you foresee the PPP coming in, you know, to bail us out, you know, within the structure? Dr. Sanusi.
Like I said before, PPP is an embodiment of the people, public sector. Yes, agreed. You cannot go into any business not wanting to make profit.
Or let me make myself clearer. You know, we're looking at the economic challenges of the nation. How can PPP come to our rescue now? I know that we had the Dangote refinery, something, and all of that. You know, but in what specific areas do you feel that, okay, government can move in, you know, and engage the private sector more, such that we can have a relief within the economy?
Well, from my angle, I'm a human resource specialist, and basically is helping to ensure that we don't have talent drain in our nation. There is what we've all been hearing. For us to get to this crisis is all because people are not happy with what is going on. We need to be very practical in our approach, even as we're seated here. People are not happy with what is going on. We have a lot of talent drain in our nation. Let's call the spade a spade. There is a word that people are saying now, japa, japa, japa. They all live in the country. And even you go to banks, people are leaving. The fact is that, from my angle, there is a way that public and private sector can come, because government have schools, they have universities, and they have lecturers, they have teachers. But like we said before, there is a need for effective collaboration. There is a need for efficient and experts to come on board What we need to understand is the framework to get it right from the beginning. And from the talent, to eliminate talent drain or reduce talent drain in our nation, there is a need for the private sector, the HR personnel, the consultants to come in, liaise with the government in areas where they can help to reduce this. There is a lot of work to be done. The crisis now, yes, you have the oil crisis, you have unemployment crisis is there, the health sector crisis is there, transportation crisis is there, power and energy crisis is there. Government cannot do it alone. But at the end of the day, we keep saying that our young people, they're the future of tomorrow. To me, I say they're the future of today. Today is the future. Today is the future. And from that angle, well, we come and we advise the government on how to move forward with our youth. There is a project that we have on board now. We call it Community Talent Connect. That is working from the local level. Thank God on Abeokuta, sorry, is it Abeokuta Expressway now, the gateway, you can see a lot of industries that are springing up now. They weren't there like 4 years ago. And this is a way that this is going to create so much employment for the young people. There is the IT hub there as well. We are in a digital economy. Government can't do it by itself. Invite the private sector to come in. People that are relevant with expert opinions and knowledge on how to bring it to life. A lot of the time we tend to pay lip service to what we can do. A lot of the time, well, the problem is monitoring and compliance and accountability. But when we bring in like-minded public private sector that know the pains of the country, of what the people are facing, young people are facing, they will get it right. They will get it right. There is no way that profit will not be made. And profit depends on, it doesn't have to be monetary, because there are different returns on investment. It doesn't have to be monetary profit. It can be a reduction in unemployment. It can be making sure that our people, you know, sometimes you hear from abroad that a surgeon performed brilliant surgery in America. And who is that surgeon? He's a Nigerian doctor. You can hear people are doing well abroad. Why did they study when they were little? They studied in a village in Nigeria. So we do have the best education system. But we need to improve on that. We need to encourage, the government needs to come out more and get the right people. And I think that's what effective collaboration is all about. You know, we need to stop paying lip service to paperwork and actually do the work. This kind of crisis will be eliminated. India did it. India is well populated like Nigeria.
But when we talk about this crisis now, the crisis we are having now is a crisis of CBN and banks, and it doesn't have anything to do with the public. It does.
You know why? Because at the end of the day, who is spending the money?
Yeah, but we are not, the people, the masses now are not anywhere near.
They are not anywhere near it. You see, the government is trying, no, CBN is trying to create a digital economy. Okay. Is that not so? Okay. We don't want to be political here now. They're trying to create a digital economy. At the same time, the people are aggrieved because of the length of time and things like that. But we need to, that's why I'm saying that we need to move away from paying lip service to the paper framework that we hold and understand the plight of the people.
All right.
Okay. Can I just say, whilst I'm agreeing with Dr. Shanusi here, I'll add, if we're looking at PPP solving the economic crisis, you'll find out that the current economic crisis we have in Nigeria is transient. It's not permanent. So when you look at the cash crunch, you look at fuel crisis, those are not permanent problems. They will pass. And I'm very certain that in the coming weeks, there'll be more fuel and there'll be more cash in the economy. But when we're looking at longer-term economic crisis and how PPP can do this, if we look at the Ogun State example, we've all heard of Ishaya, I's infrastructure, S is social welfare, E's education, Y's youth empowerment and culture, and then A, agriculture. Now, all of those tenets can actually benefit, and they do benefit from PPP in Ogun State. So if we take I's infrastructure, as we know, covers our roads, covers our social infrastructure, commercial economic infrastructure, hospitals, ICT, like Dr. Shanusi just mentioned, we have an IT hub. So there are a lot of infusion that PPP can come into. So it goes across the board. And if properly done, I did mention earlier on that PPP is not suitable for every single project. But when the public sector and the private sector sit down together, we have a scoping exercise in Ogun State. We look at the project festival. Is this suitable for PPP? The Office of Public-Private Partnerships would always do this festival. Is this suitable? What kind of investors do we need here? What longer-term benefits do we want for the people of Ogun State? And how can this infrastructure, this asset that belongs to the government, how can it be improved? And you know, those are the sort of things that we look at. So there is light at the end of the tunnel in terms of the economic crisis and the infusion and the benefits that PPP can actually contribute to improving the economy.
Now, Barrister Duwale, so what's in the pipeline with regard to the PPP model in these states? What other areas are you looking at?
Okay, I've mentioned the airports, I've mentioned the hospital. Roads are a key thing. One of the things that you'll find that the current administration has built more than 400 kilometers of roads and is still commissioning new roads in the coming weeks and months. So infrastructure is very important. We are an agrarian economy in Ogun States. We're the highest producers of farm produce, cassava, poultry, and the like. We need to be able to get these products to the market. So that's why roads are so important. Sometimes people do ask, why are you building all these roads? Communities need to be connected to be economically viable. So that's one thing. And also bringing up, rural economies. The farm produce, like I said to you, needs to get to the market. The other thing we're looking at, we've mentioned large-scale infrastructure, we've mentioned airports. Governor Dakabi, MFR, has mentioned that we're looking also to build a deep sea port. And we have, if you look at Olokola, that's something that the governor has mentioned, and that's a very viable project, longer term, because it's a natural resource. We have the deepest natural draft in this part of the country. So therefore, it just makes so much sense. Lagos State is the fourth largest economy in Africa, and by virtue of our location, so we're looking at the push-pull factor. So it's important to ensure that we make the most of the location of Ogun State. So PPP is actually going across the board. So when you mention which other sectors, it goes, I've mentioned Ishaya, so all those five pillars are benefiting and will continue to benefit from a public-private partnership going forward.
Okay, well, Barrister Sanusi, I know that this is a model that World Bank takes across the globe, saying, oh, it could solve. I know that Jamaica has also done very well using the PPP model to manage the economy somewhat. But looking at this model, what we've seen so far, the legal framework, the operationalization, are they aligning with the World Bank principles?
I think they are, because the World Bank has actually been involved with Nigerian PPP projects since I think in Nigeria we started in about 2011, and since then they've been involved with Nigerian PPP project. The World Bank, they help to ensure that the legal framework and every operational ideas are designed well for the benefit of the populace. Every country, every third, especially every country like Nigeria, India, like I mentioned before, the World Bank is always interested in how we're progressing, how we're making sure that our people are benefiting from the infrastructure that the government, embark upon. So there is no problem with the World Bank and Nigerian government actually coming together and making sure that the legal framework, the operational framework, they're working together for the common good of the populace.
But then people would also feel that, sometimes when you have these interventions, they are not particularly directed towards the progress. It's more or less, well, maybe they want to keep their own business going, but they are not much. For example, when you look at Nigeria, when we had SFEM, second tier foreign exchange market, our naira was about 3 naira to the dollar. And that time they gave us, the World Bank, the IMF, they gave conditionalities, they said everything was going to be all right, and then eventually we are now overboard, almost 700 or more or less to the dollar. And you are asking yourself, okay, these interventions, can't we do it our own way? Particularly when we don't, some of the interventions that we do could be sourced locally, and even if it's not sourced locally, can we not take our own destiny in our own hands? Don't we have competent people? Don't we have competent economists? Don't we have competent people who understand the terrain, who could define a path for us as a people? Why must we? And I'd like the DG to take that now. Why must we now depend on what the World Bank says, what the IMF says, what this one says, and then we are strangulated at the last end? Why can't we stand on our own? Is it that we don't have that financial strength? And especially some of these bills are not even coming from the World Bank.
I think, excuse me, thank you. I think we can stand on our own. And I think we've shown progressively over the last 25 years. And if you look at the last 5 years, I think Nigeria has taken a strong stand in wanting to and taking steps to solve its own problems. So if you look at it, we're one of the best resource countries in the world when it comes to human capital. I think Dr. Shanusi made reference to that. We send professionals all over the world, but those we're able to retain, we do retain, and they stay back and they give the best that they can. So you mentioned that government has no business running a private business, but I did say what government does very well. So when it comes to fiscal policy, when it comes to legislation, when it comes to looking at economic policy that will take us forward, that's something that we are doing and we're doing quite well. But we need to improve upon that, and I think the steps are there. I mentioned that I can't help talking about public-private partnerships. In Ogun State, I mentioned the public-private partnership law because we decided that look, we need to move forward properly. We need to enshrine these things in the law so that succeeding governments will keep to it, and even our private sector partners will keep to it, and they have the benefit of that as well. We're looking at economic policy that's taken us further. We play to our strengths. We know where we're in Ogun State. If you look at the policies of Governor Dr. Abeokuta and the France government, they take into consideration our strengths, where we are. I've mentioned Ishaya, I've mentioned agriculture, I've mentioned infrastructure, I've mentioned social development. Ogun State has one of the highest numbers of private secondary schools and also tertiary institutions in Nigeria. So we have a budding youth population. What's happening to them when they come out? So when we say what is government doing, we are harnessing policy so that when they come out, we're encouraging ICT, we're encouraging youth programs, we're encouraging sports, we're encouraging culture, and then also the government also absorbs some of them. One of the beauty and one of the best things that this government did when they came in was that the government absorbed a lot of people who are taken on by the previous administration. Government is a continuum, and that was a fantastic thing, very laudable that Governor Abeokuta did when he became governor. So moving forward, it's a government that values the workforce. It's the government that's paying a lot of backlog of pensions, as the case may be. I'm saying this just to ensure that when we sit down and we look at the problems that we have, we start to look at solutions, viable solutions. How do we solve this? How do we do things better? And what steps are we taking? And I think that's the very important thing to look at. So Nigeria's economic challenges will not be solved by the World Bank, and they will not be solved by the IMF. They will be solved by Nigerians, Nigerian professionals, and Nigerian people across the board, white-collar workers, blue-collar workers, coming together, sitting together, and deciding the best way for our country, for our populace, for our communities, and for our economy.
All right, I think we'll just bring this program to a close on that note. We'll just take your last words, Dr. Sanusi. The future of PPP in Nigeria.
The future of PPP is in the hands of the private and public sector. Okay. There is no way. They have to collaborate. Government is for the people, and the people have to work with the government.
All right. You agree with that?
When properly constructed, properly planned, properly written, and properly executed, public-private partnership works all the time.
All right. I think the message is very clear. When properly executed, properly, I can't give all those properly that you said, but I'm sure everything is properly done, like we have properly put this program together this morning, and I'm sure the partnership will continue. It is a laudable project. It is a laudable partnership actually for the country, and we can always hope for the better. We'd like to thank the DG for being part of this discussion this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
We wish you well in what you are doing in Ogun State.
Thank you.
And we hope that we will get better and better by the day. And our human resource personnel, Dr. Sanusi, we also want to thank you for bringing the human angle to the whole discussion. Thank you so very much. All right, that's about the package for the first segment. We'll take a break now. When we come back, we're going to take another topic. And of course, you don't want to miss it. Stay with us.